Good morning, everybody. It's nice to see you all. Hello. Welcome to the River Road Unitarian Universalist Congregation. I'm Reverend Karen Rasmussen, your pastoral care associate. And if this is your first time here in person, we welcome you. We hope you'll stop by the welcome table so we can get to know you and help you get connected. For those watching live on YouTube, please feel free to join in the chat with your online host. If you're watching this at a later date and have questions, please visit our website to learn how to connect with us. I have a couple of announcements. Fancy that. The College Access Fundraiser is only a week away. Seth Kybal and Angela Lane will be returning, joined by Sean Lane. The theme is musical adventures, and the evening will feature a wide variety of genres. Get your ticket today after the service in the fellowship hall and before the 7 p.m. performance, which is also streamed on YouTube. We'll offer snacks and drinks beginning at 6 p.m. The fundraiser supports the college access scholarships we offer to our local high school graduates. The first game night of the congregational year is next Sunday, September 22nd, in the Fireside Room. Game nights are for everyone, not just families with kids. Drop in anytime between 4 and 8 p.m. or stay for the whole time. If you'd like, bring your favorite games to share or some food or some beverages for the potluck table. And on this Sunday, we will be celebrating the fall equinox with a fire and s'mores in the Fireside patio. Check out our latest art exhibit today during coffee hour and come to the opening reception with artist Barbara Mandel today between 3 and 6. Big responsibility here.
We gather together this morning because others came before us. Some have left examples for us to follow, others lessons for us to learn from. And the paradox is that many have left both pain and joy.
We honor our ancestors this morning, not because they are perfect, but because without them, we would not be here. Together, sharing our joy, our pain, our living, and our dying.
Good morning. Good morning. Do you feel like singing? Yes. Okay, let's rise in body or spirit as you are willing and able, and let's sing Peace Like a River. Let's feel peace like a river. Hit it, Cliff.
I am very excited about the interim process and the work that this congregation is going to do to figure out who we are. River Road has changed a lot in the last decade or so. And who have we become? What have we grown into? We start that process today with some storytelling about River Road. You'll hear a lot more about it from Reverend Connie. Not just stories that we've heard here in worship, or stories that are on the website, although those are fantastic stories. You should all read the ones on the website. Awesome. All of the stories are important. In fact, today's prophetic voice, author Chimamanda Adichie, talks about the dangers of a single story. When we hear just one story from just one source, or the same story from many sources, we're only getting a small piece of the picture and the richness of that story. Here's a snippet from Chimamanda Adichie's TED Talk.
I come from a conventional middle-class Nigerian family. My father was a professor. My mother was an administrator. And so we had, as was the norm, live-in domestic help who would often come from nearby rural villages. So the year I turned 8, we got a new houseboy. His name was Fide. The only thing my mother told us about him was that his family was very poor. My mother sent yams and rice and our old clothes to his family. And when I didn't finish my dinner, my mother would say, "Finish your food. Don't you know people like Fide's family have nothing?" So I felt enormous pity for Fide's family. Then one Saturday, we went to his village to visit. And his mother showed us a beautifully patterned basket made of dyed raffia that his brother had made. I was startled. It had not occurred to me that anybody in his family could actually make something. All I had heard about them was how poor they were, so that it had become impossible for me to see them as anything else but poor. Their poverty was my single story of them. Years later, I thought about this when I left Nigeria to go to university in the United States. I was 19. My American roommate was shocked by me. She asked where I had learned to speak English so well and was confused when I said that Nigeria happened to have English as its official language. She asked if she could listen to what she called my tribal music, and was consequently very disappointed when I produced my tape of Mariah Carey. She assumed that I did not know how to use a stove. What struck me was this: she had felt sorry for me even before she saw me. Her default position toward me as an African was a kind of patronizing, well-meaning pity. My roommate had a single story of Africa, a single story of catastrophe. In this single story, there was no possibility of Africans being similar to her in any way, no possibility of feelings more complex than pity, no possibility of a connection as human equals. So that is how to create a single story. Show a people as one thing, as only one thing, over and over again, and that is what they become. It is impossible to talk about the single story without talking about power. There is a word, an Igbo word, that I think about whenever I think about the power structures of the world, and it is Nkali. It's a noun that loosely translates to be greater than another. Like our economic and political worlds, stories too are defined by the principle of Nkali. How they are told, who tells them, when they are told, how many stories are told, are really dependent on power. Power is the ability not just to tell the story of another person, but to make it the definitive story of that person. The Palestinian poet Mourid Barghouti writes that if you want to dispossess a people, the simplest way to do it is to tell their story and to start with secondly. Start the story with the arrows of the Native Americans and not with the arrival of the British, and you have an entirely different story. Start the story with the failure of the African state and not with the colonial creation of the African state, and you have an entirely different story.
So, I encourage you to think deeply and dig really down deep into your own stories about anything, but specifically today, we're looking at stories of River Road. Everyone's perspective is different, and everyone's perspective is important. What story are you going to tell? So now the children and youth and their teachers are dismissed to their classes. Elementary school is going to go out the back and down the stairs. Middle school, out the back and up the stairs. High school is going to go, you can either go outside and around and enter under the bridge, or go across this bridge and go down the elevator.
It's good to have the youth back. It's good to see them going off to their respective classrooms and places to gather to share their important time together. Their formation is one of our principal reasons for being here, isn't it? Yeah. This morning, as we come together under this somewhat hazy sky, we are grateful for the opportunity to be inside a safe, contained, cool-ish space. We are aware that there are many who are struggling with the elements right now, many who do not have shelter, many who are braving rains and floods and searing sun or drought or any number of natural or man-made catastrophes. We come into this quiet and sacred space cognizant of the fact that there are many who cannot practice their faith, whatever it is, in the spaces where they find themselves. We come into this space as liberal religious thinkers, cognizant of the fact that in many spaces, neither liberal nor free nor religious thought is encouraged or permitted. We come together and smile at one another, grateful to be together, aware that in so many spaces in our world, we can barely stand to be with others who are different. And this is the circle of our lives. These joys, these sorrows, these happy moments, these not so happy moments, these are the cycles of existence. For all of them, we are grateful because they teach us things. All of the moments that we've experienced, from the time we were born to the time that we find ourselves in this space or in this virtual space today, all of those past incidents have brought us to this moment. They have all had an impact on us in one way or another. And for those, we are grateful. So this morning, I invite you into a moment of silent meditation, reflection, or prayer as we contemplate the moments that make us who we are as individuals, as a society, and as a larger world.
In support of our congregation and the community beyond, the morning offering will be gratefully received. We do so mindful of the fact that we draw water from wells that we did not dig and pick fruit from trees that we did not plant. This is as it should be, and so we dig and we plant for those who come after. If this is your first time visiting with us today, please feel free to let the plate just pass you by. Your presence is your gift to us. To learn more about why we give of our financial treasure, you can check out our website at rruuc.org. There you can find information about all of our vibrant programs and all the ways to connect to the mission and to the vision of this congregation. You can also give right there on the main page by clicking on the blue Give Online button. You can also text to give. The text to give number is 73256. Again, that's 73256, and be sure to add RRUUC and the amount that you would like to give. Thank you for sharing all of your time and your talent and your treasure with us.
That was wonderful. I needed to hear that today. The stories we tell. So I'm going to start with a confession. I am a history nerd. I have been since I was a kid. I had a dentist who was a World War II veteran, and I would make up excuses about hurting teeth so that I could go let him tell me stories of battles. My mom got suspicious. But when I'm not working on a sermon or some other writing, it's not uncommon for me to spend a Saturday night watching a documentary about some obscure event in history. For me, it's fascinating. Unfortunately, my family doesn't always share my passion. Their eyes tend to glaze over when I share some random historical fact. It's often followed by not, how do you know that, but why do you know that? But there are 3 reasons why I study history. First, because it's interesting, even more so when it's personal. I am researching my family history, and my great-great-great-uncle on my mother's side fought in the Civil War, was a member of the 54th. My great-great-grandfather on my father's side was an enslaved man who followed his owner's son into the Civil War, not as a Confederate soldier, but as a servant. He was buried in Confederate clothing. I'll tell you more about the 2 of them at another time. As you can imagine, the stories I've uncovered have exceeded my wildest imagination. I study history because it's informative, and it helps to explain how we came to be as a society. Who built and invented what? Why did they do it? What was life like before cars, air travel, computers, electricity, fill in the blank? How did we develop our understandings of intangible ideals such as freedom and democracy? What are the roots of oppression and racism? Another reason I study history is because it's instructive. By teaching us where we came from, history can provide guidance on where we're going. By showing us the benefits of repeating a particular course of action, or by showing us what not to do, or by inspiring us to create an entirely new path. Indiana University professor Henry Glassie wrote that history tangles the past with the present in webs of fact. Its practice is to treat things that exist here and now as though they concern the past, and to use them in new compositions designed to equip people for their trip into the future. I read this in a University of Wisconsin History Department professional services kind of bulletin thing, like this is why we do what we do kind of thing. To study history is to study change. We use a range of methods and analytical tools to answer questions about the past and to reconstruct the diversity of past human experience. How profoundly people have differed in their ideas, institutions, and cultural practices. How widely their experiences have varied by time and place, and the ways they've struggled while inhabiting a shared world. We study history in transitional ministry as well. And I mentioned to you that this is one of the 5 things we're going to be doing. Why do we study history in transitional ministry? Well, because we, as the transitional ministers, we're new. We do research on congregations before we decide where we might be interested in going, but we don't know all the things. What we see is what's given to us, and that's typically what's made publicly available on the website. And maybe there are some things that show up in the congregational record or the Match.com profile, as I refer to it. We can research, but we can't learn everything. Another reason why we study history and transitional ministry is to get to know the congregation, to get to know you, not just the dates, not just the names of the famous people who've been through here, not the educational backgrounds of the people who are members, but the really, really deep spiritual history of the congregation, of the people who come together. What is their collective hunger? What is their collective dream? We want to learn that. We want to learn the ministerial history. Yes, we can look at the chart and see Reverend A was here from 1910 to 1919, followed by this one from 1920 to 1929. That doesn't tell me anything, except some dates. What are the stories of those ministries? Sometimes they are amazing stories. The story of Reverend William Furness, who often had armed parishioners sitting in the front row of his congregation because in the 1800s he dared to preach of abolition and needed to be protected. So the story of his fierce belief in that was important. It's a big part of the history. And sadly, sometimes the stories are stories of misconduct, of the minister who maybe violated some boundaries, of the minister who was struggling with a deep personal trauma or illness, substance abuse issue, of the minister who perhaps was asked to leave. All of these are more than just the dates of someone being here. We need to know that history too. We want to know the relational history. How do people get along in the congregation? Is everybody really welcome here? You say it, but do you mean it? Do you practice welcome here? Or are there stories of people who walked in and hung around for a while and perhaps felt like, I don't belong, and didn't come back? Or maybe who felt, I don't belong, and stay, but keep that feeling in their heart. Can you imagine the pain that must bring? There are people who are so joyful about River Road. There are people who have memories of the day they were married in this space, the day their child was dedicated in this place. Or as I learned yesterday, stories of the person who loved this place so much his ashes are part of the building foundation. Those are the stories. That's the history that we are looking for. I want to know who you are. And I want to know why you are. And how did you get to be in this place, in this moment? Those of us who study congregational histories and do transitional work are aware that our congregations tend to fall into a few stereotypical categories. Reverend David Keyes, who was a long-term transitional minister, kind of grouped them into 4 categories in a writing called Coming to Terms with History. He gives them fictional names, but kind of describes them this way. And it's up to you to figure out where you see or don't see River Road or any other congregation you've been part of. I'm not picking a category. There is the church in denial. This is the church that is suffering from deep, disabling dysfunction. They have patterns of declining attendance and giving. They have low staff morale. They have an outdated RE curriculum and a huge board of almost 20 people that wants to manage every single aspect of staff, programming, and facilities. During transition, these congregations tend to suffer from loss of reputation or fear of exposure, that they aren't perfect. There is the long-term pastorate, which he uses the code name Dowdy Universalist Church. At Dowdy Universalist, the minister's been there for 32 years. They used to have 500 members in the 80s, and that's reason enough for folks who still attend today to want to go back to. They remember it fondly. And they're aware that maybe the minister stayed just a little too long. And now everything is slightly outdated, a little dusty, and maybe in need of some revitalization. And then there's the negotiated resignation, where the minister is asked to leave. These come in so many different flavors. It could be for misconduct. It could be because we hate your sermons. It could be, I don't know, it could be any number of reasons why. But sometimes only the board is aware of what really happened, which leaves the congregation thinking, oh, they moved on to a much better position. Well, in reality, that might not have been the case. Or there were people who experienced that misconduct who are suffering with the anger and the hurt from that behavior, but there are also people who are dealing with the grief of, well, gee, I really like that minister. Yay for them that they've gone on to something more, but I miss them. There's always a story behind the story. And the last one, which he calls Landmark Unitarian. They suffer from satisfaction stagnation. They're a large church with many members, a beautiful building to which they've just added a new wing of which they're very proud. And their membership includes top executives of major corporations in the area. The dynamic minister of Landmark has just been lured away to head a respected nonprofit. The members of this congregation, when presented with an interim, respond favorably to frequent laudatory references to the past minister and to the congregation's past accomplishments. And they will be savvy enough to know how to preserve what they value from any attempts to introduce significant change. The congregation takes great pride and comfort in being an elite gathering of people from similar backgrounds and, quote, like minds. But this wasn't appealing to the newer people and the younger families who often had less education and lower income than those who sustained and led Landmark. These are just 4 categories. You may see yourselves in 1, 2, 3, 4, or none of them. Every congregation doesn't fit neatly into one of these categories. But time and experience tells us that these are largely representative of where things fall. But there's another part of this story. You and your stories, your experiences of your time here at River Road. Your unique stories and experiences make part of the history of this congregation. They are simple and complex. They are filled with joy and sorrow, celebration and disappointment, frustration and excitement. We can't do this transitional work without hearing your stories, all of them. So when you walked in today, you may have seen some Post-it notes. If you did not get one, or two, or three, raise your hand. Oh my goodness! Can I toss some down and maybe someone can grab the box from out back? Can you just take a couple and pass them back there for me? So what are you going to do with these? You will notice that along the wall, along the window wall, there are pieces of paper with dates. I'm going to ask you to think about a moment in your connection with River Road and put on your piece of paper the date. And if you know the day, if you can tell me it was 9/11/2001, fine. If you know that it was 1994, that's fine too. And then what that memory is. What is that memory? I'm going to give you a little moment to think about it before we sing our closing hymn. But I'm going to tell you what we're going to do with these first. If you are watching online, we invite you to do one of two things. You can put your memory in the chat, or we've also shared with you a link that will go to a Google form that gives you the space to fill in your information as well. This will also be in the newsletter this week. There's a Google form there. It does ask you some other identifying questions, but I'm not asking for your name. I'm asking how long you've been a part of this congregation and whether you've been part of any other congregation. So we're going to take maybe a moment of some quiet time for you to think and maybe to write. And then we're going to sing, and we're going to close our service. And you can put your Post-it on the page that represents the year when your memory took place. You can continue to do this during coffee hour. These will be moved to the bridge, I think, during the coming week. This will be available for the next 2 weeks. You can put in as many memories as you want, either on paper today or using the Google form. We will collect all of them. They will be shared anonymously to help us figure out what is the history and the story of River Road. So let's pause for just a second, and then when Cliff starts playing some music, we will sing. Give me a minute. Writing your thought down, and after service you can put it on the board where it fits. Let's rise in, oh, you're still writing. You're really into this, aren't you? Tell you what, stay seated. We're going to sing We Give Thanks. It's a pretty simple hymn. So maybe you can sing and write at the same time. Or some of you can write and not sing. And we'll do it that way. Maybe Karen and I'll sing the hymn for you. How's that? Let's do it. Moment. Have another moment. It's me. So, here. Our Unitarian and Universalist values call us into living lives of justice, equity, peace, and freedom. They call us into serving both with our time and talents and also with our treasures. We have opportunities for you to participate in doing the work of the Spirit in the coming weeks. Now is the perfect time to engage in our Lead at RRUUC Leadership Exploration and Development Program. The LEAD program is so much more than your typical leadership development program. We'll delve into our interpersonal, spiritual, and faith connections. You'll be paired with another person throughout the program who will be your thought partner. Also, there's no obligation to serve as a leader following the course. You may choose to participate simply to get to know the congregation more deeply. It's a wonderful way to get to know others, to learn more about Unitarian Universalism, and even develop your leadership skills in other areas of your life. Sessions are on Saturday mornings, once per month, beginning October 5th. See Beth for more info or to sign up. Actions for Justice has more postcards for Virginia voters. We have 600 names and addresses, so we have enough for everybody who wants to write a postcard. There are packets with stamps, so join everyone after the service in room 21, and there will be food. A great way to live your UU values is to share them with the children and youth of the congregation. We have 6 openings in the elementary and middle school classes. If you're interested, please contact Beth or Laura. And of course, join us for the Climate Revival right here at River Road on Saturday, August 28th, and the accompanying worship service on the 29th.
Close our time of worship together by extinguishing our chalice and reciting out loud these words by Elizabeth Sella-Jones. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
My friends, as we prepare to put our stories up there, to go write postcards, and to return to our busy lives, let's take a moment and just look around the room. Feel around the room. Notice who's here. Sense another's heart beating. Behind that beating heart is a story. The story of a life. A story that has joys and sorrows, angers and hurts, wounds and scars, and lots of space for joy and love. May your own stories be cherished, and may you cherish the stories of all those who surround you. Go in peace.